It's too toxic to be ignored. I'm glad that Celtic have come to a settlement with, I think, 70% of the claimants now. That's all been agreed today. That's good news. It's certainly good news for the survivors. And you hope that they get an element of closure out of this now. But I'm afraid I can't shake the feeling that this should have been done years ago. And I feel it's been a sort of dreadful, horribly thought out mistake by Celtic to put forward the sort of defence that they tried to put forward. I don't think it reflected well on the club. I am fairly sure that, you know, the board, I would like to think they'll regret sort of trying to keep it at arm's length, trying to suggest that the boys' club was a separate entity from the football club. Anybody who was around, you know, kids' football at that time, just football in general, everybody knew. You know, I played football throughout the 80s, 90s, and I just felt it was morally wrong for Celtic to try and adopt that position. And I know why they did it, and I know that, you know, people have got fiduciary duties as directors, and I know that, you know, they'll point out that they've got a legal obligation to look after the business first and foremost and the shareholders. I get all that, but I just feel with this one, it was just a mistake. It was badly thought out. Mm-hmm. I get it will be, you know, you have to listen to legal advice on it, but on this occasion, it never sat comfortably. I wish that Celtic had been more front-footed with it. I wish that when convictions to the likes of Jim Talbot and Frank Kearney were made in court, that Celtic adopted a different tactic and came out and took ownership of it, because nobody can accuse Celtic in its present day form of being in any way responsible for what happened back then. Where they've let themselves down for me was at that point you get out in front of it. I think it's good corporate governance, you know, with all the big companies across Europe and America now. If there is some sort of historic issue that you know, that you have to confront and wrestle with, then deal with it. Take ownership of it, apologise for it, and give some form, as much as you can, of justice to the people who were wronged and abused in this case. Mm-hmm. It's a horrible story. The whole thing it's been going on now for, 50 years? Jim Talbot started Celtic Boys Club in '66.
It's crazy.
There have been all number of convictions and all number of wrecked lives along the way. And I think it's just important, while we address it, I think the most important thing of all, Daniel, is just to wish all the best to the men and the families who came through this as survivors. And just hope, as I said at the start, that they can now take some form of closure from it. Because this has been a dreadful experience, a traumatic experience. It's gone on way too long. And, you know, I'm glad that at least they've come to this settlement with Celtic today, but I just wish it would have happened a great deal sooner than it did.
Yeah. Well, look, in the comment section, Mark Fairfield says, historical abuse is the worst. The people who are responsible should be jailed.
The monsters.
If Celtic agreed to pay compensation, that's well overdue. And I think that's a really good point. And I can only echo your sentiments as well there, Keith, about, you know, just thoughts are with the people involved, you know. Hopefully it can give them some closure.
It's terrible. And, you know, and I hope, because I know the way that works in this city, and, you know, people will be calling on one side for that's not to be talked about. Other people will be calling for clubs to get shut down. And, you know, this isn't easy. You know, this is way out of, you know, my comfort zone, whatever that may be, in terms of writing about football. This is just a horrible episode. I think, you know, these monsters continue to haunt Celtic, haunt Scottish football. And I think, you know, that there probably wouldn't be a club up and down the land that there wasn't infiltrated by one of these deviants, these paedophiles. Back in the day, the problem that made it specific to Celtic was that it does appear that there was a network, and that there were years where something more could have been done to confront them, to report them to the authorities, to the police. And that's one that doesn't sit easily. You just feel there was a whole bunch of missed opportunities for whatever reason, whether it was covering up for people or whether people were actually being more complicit than that in the whole thing. There was a number of opportunities to make sure that children, because that's what we're dealing with here, children were better protected. They were there to try and, with a dream of becoming a football player. And, for the vast majority, that dream was to become a football player in a green and white shirt. That was all that mattered. And these monsters, these absolute beasts, took that opportunity to manipulate the situation for their own gratification and sexual ends. And it's... Look, do you know what? I'd rather not talk about it. I hope it doesn't turn into a big talking point because we are, to all intents and purposes, a football show. Keep it light as we can. I don't want to get bogged down in this, but I think it's important that people recognise what's happened here. And I do think it's important that, it's pointed out that Celtic could probably have done a great deal more with this. They could have brought this to an end some time ago and should have done. I think they were morally compelled to do more. But that said, I'm glad for the survivors that it's reached some sort of conclusion. There are still some cases outstanding, and we hope that they are dealt with speedily over the next few weeks, and maybe Celtic can walk away for this